start to think of this passage, I think of love's extravagance. Love's extravagance. I know many of us have been there at some point in our life. It's when you do something big for someone you love. Can you think of something in your mind that you've done big for someone you love at some point in your life? It's what people would say you went over the top. You went above and beyond just to make an example or to do something. It's love's extravagance. I remember on September 30th of 2005, Jay and I were dating long distance, 2 hours away. He was here, I was in Cottonwood. And so whenever we met, it was intentional. Like, we had to plan it on the calendar. Like, we're going to go on a date. We're going to set it for this day, and we'd calendar it in. Well, I took a few days off to go on vacation. And so we were starting off vacation, and he said, hey, Friday morning, we're going to go meet my friends for breakfast. But they're teachers, so we have to meet them at 6:15 in the morning. I know, ideal, right? Vacation day number 1, 6:15 a.m. And I was like, all right, sure. I really haven't met a lot of his friends, and these were people that were college friends that lived here in the valley. And so I was like, yeah, let's go. I'm willing to get up. Let's go do it. So he picked me up, and we had to drive like to the other side of the city. And when we got about northeast of I-17 up north, I noticed we were like driving through the industrial area. I was like, this is a random place for breakfast. And we started driving, and all of a sudden we pulled in, I believe it was the Deer Valley Airport. And all of a sudden there's 2 men standing there by the chain link fence. One named Jeremy, Jay's brother, and the other named Phil, Jay's cousin. And I was like, what are they doing here for breakfast? And they're holding these big signs. I think it said, I love you. Yeah, it said, I love you. And I thought, that's so weird. I don't love Jeremy. But if Jeremy wants to hold a sign for me, that's great. And they're just holding this sign. And you have to remember, these boys are late night boys. So I don't think they slept. I think they stayed awake the whole night and went over there and just holding the sign. And we drove on in, and when we got inside, there was all these hot air balloons. You know the beautiful hot air balloons that are all over the skyline early in the morning? Well, Jay had planned it that we were going to go on a hot air balloon adventure that morning. And so we get there, and he had planned it all with the guy that was engineering that hot air balloon. And he had a video camera with him, and the whole time I'm like, this is not breakfast, you know? How many of you are planners and you like to go with the schedule? Yeah, this isn't breakfast. And we got there, and we go up in the balloon. And I have to tell you that I'm very cautious. I'm sure Jay is like the crazy extreme one. Let's do it on the fly. I'm like, let's think about it. Let me read the statistics. Let me find out the safety of this before we get involved. And so it's probably good that I didn't know what we were doing, because I would have watched YouTube videos on what happens on the takeoff and the landing, and I wouldn't have been so grateful to go on this. But we got in the hot air balloon, and then we were, I don't know how many feet up in the air. And Jay asked me to marry him, and it was really exciting. And it wasn't just us two. We had some friends. We didn't even know who they were, but they became our friends. And they were in the basket, and they're like, oh, and everybody's clapping. And then after that part was over, we actually both started laughing, because Jay leaned over and said, could you imagine if that ring fell out over the basket and just landed in the desert? And I said, I thought the same thing. And I was like holding my hand the whole time. It didn't fall. But then the landing came. And how many of you have been in a hot air balloon and had the crash landing? Okay. It is a crash. It doesn't come down gracefully. And you land, and as soon as we start to land, the guy controlling the basket said, everybody needs to lean the opposite direction, because we're going to go face down. And I'm like, this is not fun at all. But it turned out to be great. But it's love's extravagance. It's going above and beyond the call. It's doing things that are just over the top.